everybody. Welcome back to OTT Executive Podcast, where we interview leaders in the industry and get to know about them and from them as well. So today we're joined by Bill Mobley, CEO of FreeCast. Welcome, Bill.
Hey, thank you, Brian. Glad to be here.
Awesome. I'm so excited that we get this chance to connect. I've known you for a long time on this journey from RabbitTV and what you're doing today. So we love to start with kind of understanding a little bit about your career background and how you got to where you are today. So, Bill, introduce yourself and maybe kind of go back on a journey in time a little bit here.
Well, let me do that. Let me try.
Okay,
So essentially, Bill Mobley, CEO of FreeCast, the journey kind of let's take it from the streaming media portion of it. So the
sure.
journey begins for me in the business previously prior to streaming that I was in. It was looking for resolve for what we would call credits, and video was really kind of a non-existing thing at the time. It was barely being used, and if it at all, it was attached to some floppy that was oversized and it was horrible to try to extract it and literally bring it down to a level that it could be viewed. More or less, bandwidth was horrible at the time. But to make a long story short, it became a necessity because I was able to. My company was acquired in a multiple transactions. One of them was with GE Global Exchange Services, and it was focused on um, supply chain management and perishables goods. And at the time, you had a lot of perishable goods that would be shipped in the United States on consignment. So if there was some product problem, be it in the air freight because of weather or mishandling or whatever it might be, they send it on consignment. There was need for some form of reconciliation. So you got three pictures or four pictures on a Sony Mavic that was about that big, and the disc slid in, and to be able to send, let's say, those pictures to Colombia or Costa Rica at the time, again, poor bandwidth servicing. So
Hmm.
we got involved in looking at some type of compression software, and the Israeli army at the time had a compression software that was quite unique. And literally, our goal was to get it in place and use it for this purpose. But what came from it was our legal firm was introduced by one of the local guys here who's still with me today as our attorney. Was working with Greenberg Traurig, and he introduced us to Joel Katz, who happened to be their entertainment attorney, and he was working with, he was on the board of the Motion Picture Association, Academy Award stuff, and he said, "Listen, this is great. I mean, this technology is the ability to show video, and maybe somebody would be interested in Hollywood and just being able to show video clips and things online because the connection was using it online and watching it in a browser." So, not intentionally trying to go after Microsoft Media Player or Real Player at the time, which required 30 minutes to watch a 5-minute download by the time you get it all processed and everything. That's where kind of the pre-buffering aspect came into play. We had a company that we moved into right then and there called Mega Media Networks, which had a product called MegaChannels. And literally, it was the first time all the streaming media assets would come together. Like today, that they're all in their own walled gardens in their libraries, but literally, we had, Warner Brothers was the ones who kicked it off, and then Paramount came in, and Sony, and at the time, Miramax was a kind of a blossoming company, and we got the titles and we put them in, and those little flash files that just played, and the consumer was excited because the pre-buffering would just take you through it. You clicked and you watched, and bandwidth got a little better. You're still 56K moving into the next, layer, but the consumer was happy, and we kind of built the company up. I hired a couple of big guys, from different companies. Guy was running president for Hard Rock at the time, and Yahoo as vice president. We brought him in, built the thing up, and next thing you know, we're doing 800,000, videos a day. And
Wow.
people think, well, that's no big deal. But in 1998, 1999, you're talking about Yahoo was probably doing I think the number is 4.2 million to 4.5 million searches a day. So when you think about 800,000 videos, it was big money, double click 24/7. Those guys were writing us really big checks with little blinky banners all over the pages. And, the networks just wanted to know, or the studios just wanted to know, what people watch videos on, a computer. There was nothing
Yes.
else to think about. There was no, apps or mobile phones. And essentially, we thought we were going to get acquired by Yahoo, and we didn't, and Mark Cuban did, and Mark Cuban's Mark Cuban, and I'm still, working for a living. I guess that's the way to put it. And from there, we kind of, I guess they call it the dot com boom or explosion. There's a lot of famous people, Napster and everybody in the front of magazines going like this, like, oh, well,
The dot
because the
bomb, we're
stock's
all
all
caught up into it.
cratered. And we were in a position where we were doing really good numbers, but we our goal was to get acquired. We didn't, and took some time off. And Mama Mobley wanted kids, and so I had to get involved in that whole thing. And the next thing you know, we're growing a family. And then she was like, "You need to get out of the house because you're interrupting my flow here, dude. The kids are 5 and 6. You need to go somewhere and do something else." And that's kind of how I got involved in some of the other things that brought me back to media. And that's where we finally got back to the Rabbit TV thing. We literally just wanted information. We started with the product called Smart Guide. That was really our goal, was just to get all the stuff that people had available on their little flash files on their websites, and they were already showing 2 or 3 days later. The theme was, hey, you can now see it 2 days later on whatever website ABC, NBC, CBS had. And so we would just grab it all and essentially put it in some organized look and feel that was something the consumer could manage. So it gave them their, what I would call the first UI.
Hmm.
And in walks the doors, the guys, a couple of guys. They clearly, I was thinking, wow, these guys are coming from a long way, because they were Indian by descent, and they were here for a Walmart show and a buying show. And they said, hey, we're from Telebrands. And I had heard the name. Certainly, that was a big as seen on TV thing. And they said, we want to sell this on TV. Would you be willing to kind of license it to us? And they wanted to call it Rabbit TV. And I said, no, I do not like that name. We're called FreeCast. We're trying to trying to bring casting to people. And they were adamant about it. And as the story goes, I kind of just, that's, rabbit's ears, and they were making all these reasonable logic things. Let's put it on a little drive and consumers will relate to it. They'll just put it in their computer because they need something tangible in retail.
Hmm.
Now I realize he was making a lot of sense. At the time, I'm like, no, 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 no. And he slid a number of units that they could sell on an annual basis on a note that was underneath the coaster that I gave him for his glass of water. And the joke is, I looked at him and said, I think I can hang out with you guys. It was a big number.
Yeah.
I wasn't foolish. I just didn't like the name. And to their credit, AJ's a brilliant man. It sold millions. It blew up right at the time when the Super Bowl was about to pop, because it came out. It came out the day after Christmas, literally. And the next thing you know, it was all about sports. They were going into there, and we started putting stuff up, and it went through the roof. And I mean, the moral of the story is, we kind of grew into that, and we loved it, and built our business around it. And we were quite, profitable because we had low overhead, and certainly a lot of units being sold. The fastest selling product, technology product ever in retail, actually,
Wow.
to 1 million units. It was a cool little, thing to have on the shelf. That's
Rabbit
how it all got
TV.
started.
That is great. What a tour down memory road. Let's see, you weaved in Mark Cuban, Costa Rica, the Israeli
Right.
military. You had it all going on, right? And
Yeah.
that's great. I mean, and I love that, Bill, because that's the true entrepreneur spirit where you just open one door, it leads to another door and another door. There's opportunity there. It maybe goes sideways or backwards, and you just keep plugging away at it. That's awesome. I love that story.
And it kind of extends. I mean, it took us to here. I mean, everybody always asks to go, that's kind of the wildest story. And I roll back into it and I go, well, if you think about this, the next thing we had to do is kind of address what everybody was doing, was kind of getting everything on a mobile app. And so Rabbit TV Plus became a thing, right? So the Plus was nothing more than just adding the mobile app, because we had millions of clients. And it
And
was
so,
like,
so
okay,
for
yeah, we
people
can
that
get
may
it
not
on
be
your
familiar,
phone.
the Rabbit TV was a dongle. It was a
That
USB
was a
drive.
dongle. It was literally a dongle
Okay,
that you
yeah,
plugged into the side of the laptop, USB dongle. It's funny because he had a
yep.
hard time getting the boards, because we were buying the small boards, because all it really did was redirect you to it's like ET calling home, right? It just, you
Mhm.
put it in and it knew how to get you there, and your sign up process was in
Mhm.
the dongle. But after that, you were literally just getting a handshake into the web. But
Yep.
it got a little more complicated next, because putting together the apps were a little different than they are today, because there was not so many procedures. So you today they call it a progressive web app. So what you have on the web works on the phone. So literally, I don't know anybody had ever done that, and we were making it work in media, and we had a
Mhm.
lot of creative steps that this story keeps compounding. And
Mhm.
as it happened, it was really kind of cool. It gave the extension to it just gave us more revenue opportunities, really.
Yep.
And from there, it was kind of just one thing right after the other. Select TV came along because we knew we had to go back to retail because that was our forte.
Hmm.
And so we packaged a product under Select TV, but we said, listen, let's also go to the shows and try to figure out how we can get with these guys who are all selling IPTV. You had these amino boxes and all this other stuff
I
that
remember.
people were being funded for, and inventory was being done. And then there was the Android boxes, and we're kind of sitting there looking and going, hey, we can create something to go on these. And we did. What we didn't understand was that Amino was funding inventory for these people to put these boxes in. So we were a step behind it.
Hmm.
And then on the other side, what I would call Android boxes really were not a product for big box retail. Think of it that way, right? They never really got there until you saw the first stick or the first, Roku box certainly is the staple moment of any type of box. And that wasn't an Android box. They had, let's call it what it is. It was their own configuration of that type of a box. And we definitely weren't getting on that. That's right. So we punted there because we hit the wall because we our mass distribution through third parties wasn't going to work, and we went back to retail with Select TV, and we sold it as literally a kit, and it did pretty good. It didn't do as great as Rabbit because people had so many more alternatives, and the fascination behind
Yep.
Roku was really blowing up. And they started moving along with that, which certainly was a brilliant idea by the combined companies that put that out there and got it going. Same thing with kind of like the remotes on all the TVs where you start branding all the buttons was brilliant thinking. Obviously smarter than we were at the time. And but yet Select TV did really well. And then to kind of wrap it all up, we got into a streaming TV kit because it was more descriptive
Hmm.
where we knew the problem. The cord cutting issue was everywhere because everybody was trying to figure out how they could get locals in there, right? And we knew that we could interpret what was going on with the antenna. If they put the antenna on it, we knew we could get the lower cost antenna that was probably running about $25 retail. We could get it in there for a couple of bucks in the box and sell them the whole package. And we knew the retailers were interested in what we did because they had success previously. And we did pretty good. And nowhere near the success of what, maybe half of what they did it with Rabbit. And from there forward, it's kind of like FreeCast took over. And that's when everything changed because we reestablished a position with the streaming TV kit. We shipped everything and COVID hit.
Hmm.
And that's where the story gets really muddy for us. We're like, wait a minute, we have all this inventory out there in warehouses. It made it, I think, CVS, some of the what you call like the truck stops and things like the pilots and the all the different places where people catch those in the interstate. But we just got hammered in the big stuff, and they were turning back the inventory, going, we're not taking it.
Inventory will do
We
that.
don't. It's
Retail will
not an
do that to
essential.
you.
It's not coming in the door. But then the
Yep.
really bad news hit, and that was, hey, we're not even sure. Like people are grabbing the bags as they drive by. We don't even know if we're going to have traffic in these buildings. And that was like, whoa, that was the moment that we kind of looked at everything and said, we have this really cool architecture and we have this guy in myself that's kind of like the Forrest Gump of media because I've always been to like the events and like what do you do? Like I would change and it wasn't because I really wanted to. I was just fortunate enough to have things come at me and then we pivoted. And it was kind of like just a weird experience, and it's a joke with everybody, but let's face it, we went through it and we said, hey, we have this huge infrastructure in the back end and we know that they're building OSs for TVs. We know what's on the sticks. We know everything that's going there. How come we can't get all the networks to come back to a common place? Roku is doing what I would call a serious job of very successful at just
Hmm.
putting the apps on there, and everybody was copying that and putting it on the TV so that they could chase the ad revenue. We were looking at it differently, and we were saying, listen, why don't we just take this whole infrastructure and try to kind of chase the Spotify idea?
Mm.
Because if we can get it in one place and we can get everybody to come back again into one structure and we can reduce all those apps,
Hmm.
then how much infrastructure could we reduce for the industries and the companies and the revenue and bringing it all back? And
Hmm.
that just started making sense. It didn't make sense to anyone because everybody sees it as a competitive thing right out of the gate. are
Right.
like, hey, we don't want to let
Well, you're
go of
coming out of the
our.
age of walled gardens, right? Like everybody was
Yeah,
protecting
right. I
their
mean, they don't
garden.
want to let go of the paywall, and we're thinking that has nothing to do with it. You can still procure your paywall. The question
Yeah.
is, why are we leaving the consumer completely blown out and confused? Because still to this day, and no disrespect to a lot of the companies, NFL was 7 different places I had to go to watch the games last year. Seven.
Mhm.
And frankly, it's kind of hard right now to even follow the NBA playoffs because I'm like, where's it at? We're in this, and it's going to be on one of those two. But all season long, hell, I had NBA ticket, I had Amazon. It was between your TBS TNT intervals and between different nights, and Peacock got it, or it was Paramount I don't even know. They get involved, and you're kind of like, well, which night is it on what?
Twitter
So
for
again, not to
NFL on Thursday nights. It's like, what the
like
heck?
which night are we on?
Yeah.
Which channel is it on? And the question is that you got a Google TV that kind of tries to bring it together in their interface because they're going to send you to the apps, but
Mhm.
still the apps exist. They're rebooting, they're going in, you're searching only within. And we wanted something where if you wanted to search, you could search everything.
Yeah.
If you wanted to get to everything with no real competition issues, but the people would say, yeah, but when they're in our environment, we can sell them more. Well, there would be an argument laid to that. If I can cut your infrastructure cost by 70%, which is your primary cost out there, overhead and everything else, isn't really what Spotify and Apple, iTunes, and everybody really did. While it brought it all together, it also reduced it. So music is made, artists go in, and labels put it in, and you're down. Think about all the infrastructure that was reduced. Think about all the waste. That thing is blowing up, not just them as a service, and it's a paid service, but that industry that is absolute. Listen, they're buying the sports teams. Let's call it what it is, right? And
'Cause that's where the
you have
money
the
is. Yeah.
athletes and the music people buying
Yeah.
into the largest PE firms out there. There's a reason for that because that industry is retaining its revenue and the shareholders are retaining a lot of money behind these companies. And as much as this what I would call broadcast initiative that's going to change in 2029, I think you're going to see some big changes in this industry.
All right, so let me pause you there because I want to read back some of that before we kind of get into the
Yeah,
tension of the
sure.
present day and where the opportunities are. You were telling the story, we're watching our first streaming was on our laptops, right? It was just a computer.
Yeah.
I remember watching Star Trek. I don't know who had that rights to that ABC or CBS, and it was the coolest thing ever. And it was like, okay, I'm watching it on my laptop. I could be on probably, watching it on TV, but I didn't control the schedule or it wasn't that kind of lean forward experience. And then you came into the problem of you had all these devices, mobile and the connected TV and the app experience. And the challenge becomes how do you unify that experience? How do you unify the search without
Mhm.
adding in all these different speed bumps to slow down and connecting dongles and whatever, changing input buttons on your remote. So you solve that, and now we get to the current day where, the name of the game is about data, it's about engagement, it's making it seamless for the viewer, but also adding value for the rights holder and for the advertisers. Talk about that. Like how does FreeCast solve some of those problems
Yeah,
today?
spot on. It really is. I mean, you look at the data. I mean, the general example I use all the time is ABC knows what's in ABC's app or their family of apps. Certainly, NBC knows that you go to The Voice and the other popular things, and CBS knows what you're watching. But listen, when you're on the top side data, let's think about Roku or or let me rephrase that, or a Google TV or anyone. When you're on the top side data, it's one thing to have given them selections to the apps. It's another thing to bring the search up, blend it all together, and then I'm following your interests because I can serve you better as the consumer, but
Mhm.
more importantly, I can serve them better not by saying, "Hey, ABC's crushing you in the comedies on this or that," right? But overall, if you blend the data and you provide the data to everyone, there's going to be a better focus of what in each market you should be developing or what you should be delivering or what, it's back to the supply chain management thing, right?
Mhm.
I mean, you don't sell a lot of avocados in certain places, but you don't sell a lot of certain, there's things that thrive in different areas. What's the same with consumers? So if you have that information, you now affected everybody in the chain. You now have the ability to feed back their data for supply in those markets because I may have a different, you know, audience in certain markets and break it right down to age groups, different, every demo geographical thing. But more importantly, you now have what you need for advertising because
Mhm.
advertising, the interesting part about all this is we are running off the major local advertisers who specifically are going into streaming, but yet they don't really get the data for local because the locals don't really participate at the highest level on that because
Mhm.
it's going to the big streaming companies before it comes back through the national pipe. That's
Mhm.
why you're seeing a lot of Zen and a lot of this moment, and a lot of listen, I'm watching the game and I turn to my son, that's 25,000. That's 25,000. Because
Mhm.
here I am in a market where I should not be getting, be patient slates when stuff should be serving.
Mhm.
And when you look at those people who want the local markets, your car dealers, your tort lawyers, your injury lawyers, your insurance companies, the air conditioning companies, of which we have changed our whole advertising model to focus on that
Mhm.
because they want to get the particulars in that market. Somebody who's serving the air conditioning systems in Florida right now, who has a big market share already, what they're really looking for is the people who are streaming. Yes, they're looking for people with a home with age this age. They're looking for it because that means the AC system is probably just as old, and they want to offer them a maintenance plan because if they go in a maintenance plan, they can do a preventative thing before the thing breaks in the summertime, which is the last thing you want to happen in Florida is your AC breaking. That's the business they want. John Morgan, obviously for the people, he wants to be able to reach certain markets on different topics, right? So
Mhm.
those people are pretty important to us because those are the kind of people that we make relationships with or have shares or invested in our company because they see there's value here. And listen, that's the thing that makes the most sense to focus it at that level. Now, you're certainly going to bring in Liberty Mutual and you're certainly going to bring in, Allstate and you're going to bring in State Farm. You're going to bring in all the nationals too. Don't get me wrong. There's a place for that. But in the local market, you have to be able to deliver the data that's going
Mhm.
to help those who are trying to deliver the content to certain people in certain areas. But then that kind of pushed us in the broadcast system. That's why we created the best program, which broadcast enabled streaming TV. Everybody says, well, what does that mean? Well, if we can help the guys in the local market, they're let's call it PBS down, that aren't really as super attractive to those who are at, YouTube TV, they got ABC, NBC, CBS, your large diginets. Well, Orlando Church still wants to get to the Orlando Church people, right?
Mhm.
The county commissioner meeting is still here. They still need to have someplace to go. So if we line ourselves and bring that grid from, let's call it PBS down into the market, the local channels are here. The people who need ethnic, you're talking about ethnic, age, all those different things. The religious groups certainly have a huge, huge, huge space. But Miami, you got like the Haitian news channel, and you got, I think the Korean news channel is huge in LA. I think they're in the
Yeah.
top 15 or something, right? So that's what we're trying to bring in, and that's what kind of is taking us to the next step
Okay.
because we got to blend it all together. So it's one thing to have all your media, but it's another thing to have all your local things that are important to you as well and focus
Yeah,
on
it's
those ads.
I think the challenge and that you guys are addressing is, the promise of streaming is scale, right? And you can do things much more efficiently, global scale, ultimately, obviously have rights and
Yeah.
other sort of restrictions, whatever. But at the end of the day, just like all politics are local, all content that's relatable to me is also local. Not all of it, but a big chunk of
Yeah.
it. My
Weather,
news, my
news, things that you
sports,
need to know. Yeah, exactly.
yeah, and that's important to the advertisers too. And that therein lies hopefully a partial solution to the industry, which is just, the CPMs, going down the drain and only so much advertising chasing after so much content and eyeballs. And talk to that a little bit. Like how does everybody benefit from the FreeCast model? Because you've got multiple subscriptions, you've got your, massive library. You've got the consumer that wants to have universal search and just find their content. Talk to that a little bit. How do you build that engagement where everybody wins?
Well, that's what took us in that great pivot moment, right? We knew we had the platform. We knew we wanted to bring in local. We knew we wanted to create a local sports channel in each local market. So it sounds like what we're really after is we're going to build this big, it used to be called, locals.com, right? I think it might still be locals, but like we're trying to bring it all. That is that's more of a piece of how to get that audience in that market. But what we really, really focused on, that's an example or a global version of this that has different cities and global markets.
Hmm.
That's one way to present it. But the real thing that we were chasing was there's people who already have a tremendous amount of users in their supply. So if you're a mobile phone company, and you don't have to be the largest out there who may be using Netflix or something as a spiff, when you get your phone. What about those who, and I use this statement all the time, there's 650 million smart TVs in the world, but there's 7 billion smartphones, and that's becoming the largest growing sector. So why do in this case, only the TV manufacturers have an operating system that goes boom, and you swipe your hand or you swipe up, and there's all your media present with your local information, right? Your local stuff, your streaming packages that you have, your free streaming stuff, your fast, your local sports channel, everything that you have there, and that locals.com-ish kind of interface looking thing, and it's right there, but it's brought to you by your provider, or
Hmm.
it's brought to you by your bandwidth company, or it's brought to you by the building, the MDU that you live in, which is the same thing, who has bandwidth, the multi-dwelling unit. And that could be campus living, apartments, condos, which they're already buying bulk, or they were buying bulk because of the way it was delivered to them previously. They're going to be able to put a little Starlink dish about the size of, a pizza on the roof that's going to take away all that wired infrastructure now. Let's just call it what it is. And why wouldn't we be the best fit for something like that? So when you get there and you open it every day, it says, hey, the pool's closed tomorrow because they're cleaning it. And by the way, your class schedule has changed. Or, hey, the garbage being picked up on Thursday because Friday's a holiday.
Right.
So that branding for either the device manufacturer or the MDU,
The
regardless of
broadband
if it's
provider.
supply, they're
Yep.
connected either way, right? So
Yep.
regardless of what that is, and that's how we kind of, focused and started packaging this. We made an announcement yesterday, the Fort Pierce Utilities Company. They already do their electric, they do their garbage, they do their water, they do everything in one bill. Why wouldn't you give them that portal, that personal portal for the consumer, which has all their media and all that information in it, but it becomes that two-way communication for them as well. And it's branded with their stuff.
I think it's brilliant just because you become almost like a utility at that point. My
Yeah.
son just moved, my first kid moved out, got his own apartment. Did he sign up for cable TV? No. Like, does he have a mobile phone, mobile broadband, and will he get internet, for Wi-Fi at home? 100%. So if you package that with, a package of content and services and everything all together, it just becomes a no-brainer for someone
Yeah,
with like,
it's on all your devices, and we're willing
yeah.
to go in and do the FreeCast portion of them for a low to no cost entry thing. So think about it. They're not making an investment. They're not in the infrastructure business. They
Hmm.
don't, if you're a hotel, you don't have to worry about maintenance coming trying to figure out why this is, the used to be called the IPTV or used to be called the closed circuit before that. But think about it. And here's the crazy part, and I don't mean to kind of throw this at Samsung or LG because I have both of those products in my house, but they have a commercial unit that needs to be bought to attach to $100,000 worth of infrastructure in the telco closet where all that goes away, the ability for Hilton or Marriott to put all that hotel concierge feeling in that app is the same thing we're doing for people at home now, or in the apartment complex, or the campus apartment. It's got 4 kids and one in each room and a common living room, right? Um, so all of that is now able to be provided in what we're doing for the device or for the MDU environment that has bandwidth coming into it. But think about it. They now have the opportunity to participate in that revenue that someone like a Roku, Amazon, and a Google TV have. That's why they've created their own ad platforms. And that's why we created our own ad platform because
Yep.
we know we have to get the locals in. And it might just be the pizza joint across the street from the hotel that or the motel that doesn't have a restaurant and the dry cleaner and the things that are usually in the little card slot, here, or in the room in some folder. But all that infrastructure cost is completely duplicated and wasted money.
Yeah. And in that environment, you're still doing the core stuff of sort of universal search for content, right? Subscriber
Everything,
management.
yes.
You can still turn on and off your different subscriptions
That's
with one
correct.
account. Okay, that's important, I think, because
Yeah.
this whole fragmentation of content and apps and stuff is driving the consumer crazy,
Yeah, it's
right?
like the Airbnbs, right? I mean, they give you a little book and leave it there. Can you imagine if you pop in and say, "Hey, welcome, you're at the Wilson's house. You know, Bob and Carol love it. Here's the restaurants we eat at. Here's all the information. Here's where the streaming's at. Here's where the local channels are at. Here's where you can access your own stuff. Hit the QR code if you want to use your own account. You know, all that's already built into all that.
That's really cool. I mean, back in business school, it was all mass customization, right? How do you
Yeah.
personalize it, but not lose the scale and the efficiencies there. So I want to
And
move on
Brian,
just
I
a
was going to
little.
say right before you
Go
go,
ahead.
and we pay them. Think about that. That's even the coolest part because the revenue that we can generate in the ad platform, they bring the eyeballs, we bring the product that gets converted, and we share the revenue with them. So that's pretty amazing. I mean, that's really the part that kind of everybody thinks it's a joke. They think that we're kidding them at that point. And like, no, no, really. That what you bring in the eyeballs, we're going to bring the revenue. We should share that. And then the only other thing is the same with bandwidth. If we
Mhm.
create a relationship with you and one of our providers, that's why you start talking about the bandwidth providers being, basically partnered with what we do. And
Mhm.
we go in, we say, hey, listen, we can get you this deal on bandwidth per door. You don't have all that gear, all that equipment, all that service. Why don't we just put this thing here or there and
Make it
Wi-Fi it all
easy.
in the network and call it good? You
Yeah.
guys just save a lot of money. There's no service involved, and they'll pay us a couple of bucks a door, right? For
Mhm.
bringing it to the location. So they get the best price, they get the coolest service. They look like they're a Vegas hotel that has all those cool things and tells you what's going on in the interface, and it
Mhm.
makes everybody money. It's really nice. It's a good feeling. We like where we're at.
Yeah, and I think it's a brilliant strategy. One of the things I can't let you go unless we talk about the elephant in the room, which is AI,
Yeah.
and how, in the age of AI, how is that going to, what are the challenges there for adoption? But more importantly, like how is that going to grease the skids in terms of your strategy, your vision to maybe make things more seamless and more, integrated in faster and better? And, what do you think, how do you think AI is going to change this industry in the future?
Well, it changes everything right now. I mean, that we touch, managing content internally, creating better search opportunities. One of the things that we're releasing right now is you talking to it. So it's one you can talk to it now and it'll certainly deliver a result. But if you want it talking two-way to you, going, again, I always laugh about Rick Howe. He always uses, all these different scenarios. And it's funny because when you ask the question, you actually get a response back. And then it's okay. And I think it's a good feeling to also think about AI for us is really kind of this tool that allows us to build a lot of things that make it better for the consumer and things like your newsletter that you get every week that we send you. We send you a sports newsletter for those who want sports, and you get here's all the cool things that are coming out starting this weekend from all the different providers. And we don't favor anyone, if ABC's got a cool new show or NBC or if it's Netflix or whatever, we want to show you the new stuff that's rolling out. And but here's the thing, not every one thing is for everyone, right? I
Mhm.
might be a basketball football guy, not a baseball guy, right? Or I may be a hockey person or a soccer person. Here's the thing, that should be completely customized to you. So
Right.
that when that email's coming out, it's coming out with the things that we know that interest you, and AI is building that on the fly. That's
And
one of the things
you've
that
already
we're
built the
working.
infrastructure for that, right? Because my profile in FreeCast is already, tagged six way to Sunday. It knows everything about me.
Recommendation. It's already built all that because it
Yeah.
knows who you are. And
Yes.
it immediately is going to craft that thing and go boom and send it out. So that's we think one of the most important aspects that can really service the customer or the client's customer. It's also a great tool just for those primary assets. So recommendations, right?
Mhm.
So it's one thing to get the top level clicks, which is what everybody's working from, really just click tracking. Or is it, hey, I'm putting all these things in your backpack as you go along the way. And while you went over to Tough Guy Movies, you really only click and engage it on Sunday afternoons when there's no ball game or something, or
Mhm.
Friday night. We can see that you're moving around all the different products, and it's gonna show your history for sure. But what
Mhm.
about your tendencies and things like that? Why is that important? Everybody says, "Oh man, they're trying to get into the data. They're trying to get too much data about me." No, I'm not trying to get too much data about you to sell. I'm trying to get data about when you set your interest. then things get come to you. Ads. If you don't have an interest in ads and certain types of ads, it's
Mhm.
one thing to shut ads completely off.
Mhm.
But I will say when you start getting into things like shopping, which is happening right now, and presenting QR codes and things of interest, I'm pretty content with the idea that it's getting a little bit better every day, and
Yeah.
I'm going to start seeing things I'm interested in, things I want. And why not show me something that interests me, or a car? Or maybe my lease is coming up in two months, and hey, here's the new different types of cars that are like the one I have now. I want to go look at that. Let me go get a test drive. And it'll pop. Hey, we'll give you a, you know, 5,000 off if your test drive converts or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or here's great financing because we know a little bit about you or whatever. So
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the meme that was going around on LinkedIn a couple of days ago. It was like, advertisers, we pay to get eyeballs, and the viewers are like, we'll pay not to see the ads, right? We'll pay a
yeah,
premium for that.
yeah, 100%. And it's worth it. But again, if you could then say to your own profile, hey, I don't want to see all of these. And I only want to see these. But what happens if you go in there and you say, "Don't interrupt this"? I'm willing to go to my what I'll call, and that's bring us to the next point. I'll pay out of my media pay account the
Mhm.
ability to not see that. Now, media pay is a whole different asset inside there, which we attach to our loyalty program. So it does two things. So one, you should be able to grab all your subscriptions and have, and it's not another Samsung Pay or Apple Pay or Google Pay. That's just guarding your credit card. What we do is we use that so that you can load that and literally with whatever credit device you're going to use, and you should be able to bundle all your subscriptions and say, hey, these are my 5 subscriptions. And you should be able to pay them, and that should handle your payment process of everything. But here's the best part we're using it for. We just launched a loyalty program.
Mhm.
So everything you watch free and fast that has ads in it, because right now you're kind of locked into ads because most of the fast stuff you can't get out of it, we're going to reward you for watch minutes. And here's the coolest thing. Your watch minutes accumulate in your media pay account. And
Mhm.
as they accumulate, you now have the ability to use the money that comes from the credits, and you now have the ability to pay subscriptions with money that we've earned you
Mhm.
from that loyalty program. So now your free stuff gives you something for watching instead of nothing, and you can use that money to make payments, not for your subscriptions. So that's pretty cool when you start thinking about where if I have to watch it because I want to watch this
Right.
channel, I have the opportunity to redeem my effort.
Yeah, and that's where you're converting effort into sort of a gamified monetization.
Yeah,
So in consumers, as long as they have the choice, right? They want to put in the time and earn up credits. That's the way.
that's
I
it.
think that's definitely, a big part of the future. And the community part's important too, because the consumer wants to feel like they're listened to, they belong, right? They're not just getting content pushed out to them like everybody else. So that makes a lot
Exactly.
of sense.
Yeah, we're excited about that. There's a lot of new things that are coming out. We're just every day we're our team's awesome, and it's pretty funny. Everybody thinks we have this gigantic team, and I mean we're like probably about 50, 55 people here. And then,
Yep.
we probably have about 20 in different 20, 25 in places overseas. They just think we're this gigantic organization. And it's pretty funny that our burn rate, for instance, compared to somebody like if you took a Spotify and took all their customer service out of it and said, okay, stick them side by side. Maybe they probably spend in a day what we spend in a month, when you
Yeah.
even reduce it down. So
No, it's impressive with what you've built, Bill, with such a lean team and this whole story from the early days of streaming through Rabbit TV and today. It's really impressive. I one of the things we like to do on this podcast is sort of personalize some of the leaders of the industry and get to know a little bit about you. Is there a hobby or an interest you can share with our audience?
wow. Personally, I try to follow stoicism. That's like a personal thing that you would say. So I'll give you my most personal, in-depth thing.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
Okay, cool.
my hobby interest has been youth sports. I've been involved in, being a director of youth sports for many years. Just, my kids were very active, but as most parents are today. But ironically, my job was more of the directorship, because we always hired coaches and we always played in these like premium leagues and things. And, you know, we were fortunate to come through and win quite a bit. We were very fortunate to have, and winning was not everything. And my wife is very involved. The kids to this day, a lot of them in the pros and stuff still call her and Mrs. Mo, Mrs. Mo, what do you think of my new girlfriend? And she'll tell them straight. I mean, but it's kind of interesting because, there's a lot of kids out there, including ours, that have a lot of friends, and you know, we built a lot of relationships out of that, and it's kind of neat to see them go through the growth process. And, some do good, some don't do, is where they thought they were going to, achieve. But everyone I'm pretty happy with them as people. So we kind of use that to give him back. And that was kind of our way. And, my job was kind of to get between, the coaches and the parents and the kids. And because the coaches would come to you and say, well, what are the parents like? That's the funny thing in the industry, because everybody looks at their kid as and they're
Mhm.
told every night to go to the basket and get 40 at this little high school, but then you put 10 of the best kids in the state together to go play everybody and their 10 best kids in the United States against
Mhm.
in front of 500 coaches, are trying to give away scholarships.
Mhm.
I really love doing that. I had a lot of fun. I can see how it's difficult for my kids because it was always like all these kids all the time. So,
Yeah.
I'm probably paying dues on that one now.
Yeah, but
But
they did they excelled, right? Didn't your boys play in college?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just what I'm saying is like it's interesting because I think what's happening in industry today is a lot of the kids have now it's changed, right? Because money is now the thing, right? You're going to pay
Right.
these kids to go in. The coaches can't keep a real roster because they can't look at a 4-year plan for their kids. The second thing is very difficult because the kids have a mindset of, listen, I got to get what I can get because this might be it. And that's true because 98% of them are not going to go on and play in the
Right.
pros.
Right.
So it's not that it's wrong. It's just it was too much. And, I think it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing. It's a tough thing to be involved in that industry now. And it's very hard for me to see it kind of go to that because I saw a lot of coaches who were really good guys who were there for the kids leave the business. And now it's got even more aggressive because the parents are coming in and going, I have to put my kid in this program and I got to go spend all the weekends on the road. So that's what I mean by a lot of father-son time
Hmm.
was probably not provided as much as it should have been because we were focused on being part of an organization.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine the kids and the parents today. It's like the funny one. I don't remember which commercial it is, but it's where they talk about the kid and it's like Koloski Auto Body, where they name the kid on their
Oh, I
graduation.
saw that. It's hilarious. Yeah. Naming
Yeah,
rights
it's
for
kind of
their
one of
kids.
those things, and it's like it's more important, for them to
Yeah.
get out there and compete. But here's what it comes down to beyond the money, it's expensive to put kids in college today. So they're looking at it as, hey, if I can get my kid through a program that'll get them recognized and they can get a scholarship into college, you can pick colleges, which is kind of nice if you got a really talented kid. And the other thing though is, you got to be very careful because for me, I'm opening it up right now. For me, I go back and I think there needed to be more direct relationship time with my kids instead of so much in everybody else's kids. I'm blessed for having done it and my wife having done it, and we represent a lot of kids out there that needed additional parents or parenting. But every somebody sacrifices in all of that, right? And
Yeah.
your kids are very important at that time, and just kid time with your own is very important. So I would say to people out there that are chasing those sports, remember, make the most of it when you're not out there grinding, chasing the Memorial Day, tournament and the
I
Easter
remember those days.
Invitational and
Yep.
the this and the that. It's a lot.
It's a labor of love.
It
I
is.
think net a very big positive. I mean, I was a director for some leagues, and your kids see you in a different way, not just dad. Now you're coach or you're, director or whatever. So, yeah, I think it's a lot of good lessons there, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it was a great time and they were good and great at what they wanted to be. And when they're kids, you just want to be like Mike or like anybody else. You just want to be that person and you want to help them get there. So I'm happy we went through it. And that was pretty much today. My hobby is I want to, go fishing and smoke cigars. So that's how I'll conclude with that.
Stoicism, we got sports, cigars, and you could probably do that all the same thing, right? A
Yeah.
boat. That's awesome, Bill. Well, I enjoyed spending this time with you this
Yeah,
afternoon. I
man. You
actually learned a
too.
ton, even though I've known you for a while, that the whole back history, I hadn't heard all that before. That's pretty cool.
No, I appreciate it. It's great. I appreciate having me on. It's be fun to watch. You watch yourself and you're always worried about what you're gonna look like on video. But yeah, I'm excited about this one. That's a lot of fun. Thank you for doing it.
Well, you speak well for FreeCast. Congrats on all your success, the recent IPO,
Thank
and
you.
we'll be keeping our eye out. So
I
thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you so much, Brian. Thank
All right,
you.
great. Signing off, everybody. Once again, Brian Mahoney from OTT Executive Podcast. We were joined by Bill Mobley, CEO of FreeCast. Have a great day, everybody.